So we're going to look at solving quadratic equations, and this is where factorizing will become a key skill that you will use when you're trying to solve a quadratic equation. So let's just go over what a quadratic equation is. So a quadratic equation is where the variable has a highest power of 2. So if you see something that has a highest power of 2, most of the time it will be a quadratic. There are some certain cases where it won't be a quadratic, but most of the time it will be a quadratic. And it has an equal sign. So for it to be an equation, it needs to have an equal sign. Because if it doesn't have an equal sign, it's not really an equation. Because it has to equate to something. That's the whole point of an equation. It has to equate to something. If it doesn't have an equal sign, it's normally just an expression. But if it has an equal sign in there, it's an equation. So when we're trying to solve quadratic equation, factorizing becomes a really key skill. So what we'll do is over here, we'll just actually factorize this quadratic, right? So let's look at two numbers that multiply to negative 2, but add to 1. So I can have 2 multiplied by negative 1, which equals negative 2, and 2 minus 1 equals positive 1. So I know that when I go through the factorization process, I'm going to have x plus 2 and x minus 1, and this will equal 0. So I've taken this part over here and factorized it into brackets. Now when you're solving, you're going to make each bracket equal to 0. This is what it will look like. So you're going to have x plus 2 equals 0, or you're going to have x minus 1 equal to 0. So you can already see you're going to have about 2 solutions when you get to a quadratic. Alright? And now all you have is you've got 2 linear equations. 2 linear equations right there. Now you're just going to solve these. Isolate the x. So you're going to have x is equal to negative 2, or x is equal to positive 1. So if you think about rearranging expressions, when we take this to the other side, it becomes a negative. When we take this to the other side, it becomes a positive. And these are our 2 solutions right here. X is equal to negative 2, or x is equal to 1. So that's where you have to factorize, make it equal to 0, and you solve for the x values. Alright, now if I had to substitute these back into the quadratic here, I should get 0. So if I put a negative 2 in over here, negative 2 plus 2, that's 0. 0 times anything is 0. If I put 1 in there, I've got 1 plus 2, that's 3. 1 minus 1, that's 0. So 3 times 0 is 0. So therefore, this equation works. Now, sometimes you actually might just get an expression that's already in brackets. It's already factorized. You might get x minus 3, x plus 2 equals 0. And whenever you see this word solve, don't expand it again. You can just make each bracket equal to 0. Or x plus 2 equals 0. And you solve for x. So we get x equals positive 3, or x equals negative 2. And these are our 2 solutions. Right there. Right? So just something to keep in mind, right, when you're trying to solve quadratic expressions. Cool. Now, this is just really some basic examples. You might get some examples like this. You might have something like x bracket 2x minus 1 equals 0. Again, because we've got one bracket and just an x, what you'll have is you'll actually make this and this equal to 0. So you'll have x equals 0, or 2x minus 1 equals 0. Now this is already solved for us because x is equal to 0. We can't really rearrange or solve any further. So this is one of our solutions right here. The other one is where we rearrange. So we can have 2x equals positive 1. Therefore x equals 1/2. And this is our second solution right here as well. So it's not just always the brackets. It could be the 2 variables. Once you have factorized it, you're making them equal to 0 as well. Alright. Now, this is just some basic examples. You might get something along the lines of this as well. Maybe x bracket x minus 4 is equal to negative 3. Now, because it's not equal to 0, we can't really solve this. All right? So because it's not equal to 0, we can't really solve this. So what I'll do is I actually have to expand and rearrange and make this function equal to 0. Because you can only solve quadratic expressions when they're equal to 0. So let's expand this out. So we're going to have x times x, which is x squared, and x times negative 4, which is negative 4x. And I can take this 3 back to the other side. Oops. That becomes positive 3. Now this equals 0. Now I will factorize this, right? And then make both brackets equal to 0. So I need two numbers that multiply to positive 3, but add to negative 4. Now obviously if I've got this positive and negative, I know I'm going to have two negative numbers. So if you think about it, we've got negative 3 times negative 1 equals positive 3, and negative 3 minus 1 equals negative 4. So therefore I will have x minus 3 and x minus 1 is equal to 0. And now again make each bracket equal to 0. So x minus 3 equals 0, or x minus 1 equals 0. And now I solve. So x equals positive 3, or x equals 1. Right? And these are my two solutions right here. So keep in mind when you're solving quadratic equations, okay, they must equal to 0, and then you make each bracket equal to 0. Alright, so keep that in mind, guys. That will help you when you're solving an expression like this. I'll go over one more example, quick one. This will be a handy one as well. Let's say if we had x plus 3 squared, and this equals 16. Now we know that x plus 3 squared is equal to x plus 3 and x plus 3. Now you could expand this out and then take the 16 across the other side and solve it that way. But sometimes you might realize and go, well actually, 16 is a square number. If I just square root both sides, I'll get rid of the squared and I can make this a nice number. So I'll have x plus 3 equals 4. Now this is just a linear equation. This is just a linear equation. We can solve a linear equation quite easily. All I'll do is just take this 3 to the other side. So I'm going to have x equals 4 minus 3. Therefore x equals 1. And I've solved this expression right here. But, whoops, you have to keep in mind, this is not the only solution. We have to remember that when we do a square root, we get two solutions. It's plus or minus. Because 4 squared is 16 and negative 4 squared is 16 as well. So just keep that in mind. 4 squared is 16 and negative 4 squared is also 16, because negative 4 times negative 4 is positive 16. So I can do this another time. I can go, well actually x plus 3 could also equal negative 4. And if I do the same thing again, I've got x equals negative 4 minus 3, therefore x equals negative 7. So this is my second solution right there as well. Right, so you have to be very careful. Just remember, when you have a square root, you get two solutions, a positive and a negative solution. Right, so keep that in mind as well.